The night was quiet and cold when Daniel walked home from work. He was tired, his shoulders heavy, and his mind full of worries. The city lights glowed weakly under the cloudy sky, and the streets were almost empty. It was one of those nights when even the air felt lonely. He tightened his jacket around himself and continued, walking down the narrow road that led to his small apartment. That was when he felt it, a strange feeling, like someone was watching him. He stopped walking and slowly turned around. The street behind him was empty. No people, no cars, only the slow wind moving a piece of paper across the road. Daniel shook his head and started walking again, thinking he was just imagining things. But after a few steps, he heard it, a soft sound, almost like a tiny breath. He turned again at the end of the street. Near a broken streetlight, he saw a small figure standing still. It was no taller than a young child. The figure didn't move. It only watched him. "Hello." Daniel called out nervously, "Is someone there?" The small figure stepped forward into the weak light. Daniel's heart almost stopped. It was a girl, but not human. Her skin shimmered like silver under the pale streetlight, glowing faintly as if the moon itself lived inside her. Her hair was long and dark, floating slightly in the air as though touched by an invisible breeze. Her eyes were wide, deep, and filled with confusion and fear. She was barefoot. Her legs were covered in dust. She wore nothing but a thin, torn piece of cloth wrapped around her body. "You're going to freeze out here," Daniel said gently, his fear slowly turning into concern. She did not reply. She only looked at him. "You shouldn't be alone at night," he continued. "Where are your parents?" At that question, her expression changed. Pain flashed across her glowing eyes. Slowly, she lowered her head. No words came out, but her sadness spoke louder than anything. Daniel stepped a little closer, careful not to scare her. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said kindly. "You can trust me." For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, with tiny, slow steps, she came closer to him. Her small hands trembled as she reached out and lightly touched his coat, as if checking if he was real. "I'm lost," she whispered at last. Her voice sounded like music, soft and broken at the same time. Daniel's heart ached. "You can come with me," he said, without thinking. "I'll help you. You don't have to stay here in the cold." She looked up at him, unsure, but something in her eyes said she believed him. And so, she followed him. People never looked twice at Daniel on the street. He was just an ordinary man. But that night, walking beside a glowing alien child, everything felt unreal. The world around them felt different, quieter, as if the city itself was watching them. They reached his building, and Daniel unlocked the door. He checked the hallway. No one was there. "Come in," he whispered. She stepped inside, looking around in wonder. Every small thing fascinated her. The lights, the stairs, the shining metal doors. It was as if she had never seen a human place before. Inside his apartment, she stood in the doorway, nervous and unsure. Daniel turned on the light, and her skin sparkled softly as it touched her. "You're safe here," he said. "No one can hurt you." He gave her a glass of water. She held it carefully, like it was something precious. Then she took a small sip, her glowing eyes never leaving his face. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. Daniel thought for a moment. "Because no one should be left alone in the dark." He replied. Something fragile but powerful shifted inside her at those words. She had been ignored, stepped over, treated like she didn't matter. But this human had opened a door for her when everyone else had closed theirs. She looked down at her glowing hands. "My world is gone," she said softly. "I don't know how I survived, or how I came here." Daniel felt a strange chill. Then you can stay here until we figure it out together, he said. Outside the window, the sky flickered for a moment, so faint that Daniel did not notice. But the universe had, and somewhere far away, something dangerous had just awakened. Because the lost alien girl had finally been found, the small apartment felt unusually quiet after. Daniel turned off the lights. Outside, the city hummed softly, but inside, the silence wrapped around them like a blanket. The alien girl sat on the edge of the couch, her tiny feet not quite touching the floor. Her silver glow was much dimmer now, like a candle about to go out. Daniel watched her carefully while pretending to clean the kitchen. He didn't want to scare her by staring too much, but he also didn't want to leave her alone for even a second. "You can sleep here tonight," he said gently, placing a soft blanket and a pillow on the couch. "I'll take the floor if you want." She looked at the blanket like it was made of magic. Slowly, she touched it with her fingertips. Then, like a tired kitten, she curled herself up on it. A soft sigh escaped her lips. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel paused. Those two words felt heavier than they should. He nodded once. "Good night." As he turned away, a strange chill ran across the back of his neck. It was the same feeling he had felt on the street that night. When he first noticed she was following him, he quietly walked toward the window and pulled the curtain aside just a little. Outside, everything looked normal. Cars in the distance, flickering streetlights, the dark outline of rooftops. Then he saw it, high above the tallest building, almost invisible against the cloudy sky. A faint blue light was hovering. It didn't blink like a star. It didn't move like a plane. It watched. Daniel's heart started to race. He slowly let the curtain fall back into place. "Something's wrong," he whispered to himself. He turned to look at the girl. She was asleep now, her chest rising and falling slowly. But her face was tense, as if she was fighting nightmares. War, fire, by a broken sky. Suddenly she gasped and sat up on the couch, her eyes wide with terror. "They found me," she breathed. Daniel rushed to her side. "Who has?" "The hunters," she whispered. "They destroyed my world. They search for survivors. And they never stop." Her skin began to glow brighter again, not softly, but sharply, flickering like a broken light. "Hey, it's okay," Daniel said quickly. "You're safe here. No one knows you're inside, but they don't need to see me." Her voice trembled. "They can feel me." A faint vibration passed through the floor. Daniel felt it too. "What is that?" he asked. She slowly turned her gaze toward the ceiling. "Their ship has entered your sky." As if her words had power, all the lights in the apartment flickered. The air felt heavy and electric. A low, distant hum filled the building, almost like the sound of thunder trapped inside metal. Daniel went to the window again and carefully lifted the curtain. This time, it was impossible to miss. A massive shadow floated silently above the city, dark, smooth, and shaped like a blade. It blocked part of the moonlight. Strange glowing symbols covered its surface, burning in the same blue light that shimmered on the girl's skin. People on the streets below had stopped. Some pointed upward. Others ran. A few just stood frozen in fear. "It's looking for you," Daniel said tightly. "Yes," she replied, "and it will destroy everything to reach me." A deep, cold voice suddenly filled the room, not through the air, but inside their minds. "Returned is the lost light. Surrender yourself, or this planet will burn with yours." Daniel clutched his head. It felt like 1,000 needles piercing his skull. He could feel the voice pressing down, heavy and cruel. Beside him, the alien girl fell to her knees, holding her heart. "Make it stop," she cried. "Please." Daniel forced himself to stand upright. Blood dripped from his nose, but he ignored it. "Look at me," he said firmly. You do not belong to them. You came to me because you wanted kindness, not control. And I'm not giving you back." Slowly, she lifted her eyes to his face. And in that moment, something inside her changed. Her fear did not vanish, but another emotion rose above it. Courage. She stood up, her glow no longer flickering. Now it was steady, strong, pure. The voice returned, louder and more furious now. "You are, oh, you are power. Our weapon." "No," she said quietly. Her voice echoed, filled with an energy that did not belong to Earth. "I am more than what you made me." Without touching anything, the windows began to vibrate. Outside, the massive ship wavered slightly in the sky, as if pushed by an invisible force. Daniel backed away in shock, not fear, but amazement. "You're doing that?" He whispered. "I don't know how," she replied, "but I know why." She turned to him, because for the first time, "I am not alone." Outside, clouds swirled violently around the dark ship as her light pushed upward like a rising sun and far above the city. Something that had never known resistance before hesitated. The transformation had begun. The air inside the apartment felt thick, like it was made of invisible waves. Papers on the table slowly slid across the surface. The curtains lifted and moved as if someone unseen was breathing against them. Outside the window, the massive alien ship hung silently in the sky, dark and untrusting, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. In the middle of the room, a small alien girl stood perfectly still. Her silver skin glowed brighter and brighter, lighting the apartment in soft white and blue. It was no longer the weak, fading glow of a lost child. It was steady, powerful, as if something deep inside her had finally awakened. Daniel watched, his heart beating hard against his chest. He had never seen anything like this before. Fear still lived inside him, but now there was something stronger beside it. "Hope, what are you doing?" He whispered carefully, not wanting to break whatever was happening. "I'm not doing anything," she replied calmly. "I'm remembering who I am." Her eyes slowly lifted to the ceiling, as if she could see through it and into the sky above. "I am not just lost," she continued. "I am the last light-bearer." Daniel swallowed. "Light-bearer." "My people protected worlds from darkness," she said softly. "We healed planets, balanced stars. The hunters destroyed us because they wanted that power. They wanted to use our light for war." She slowly closed her eyes, and a strange symbol appeared on her forehead, glowing like a tiny star. "But they cannot control what comes from the heart." She added. Above the city, the dark ship suddenly shook. Cracks of blue lightning ran across its surface as it struggled to keep its position in the sky. Loud alarms could be heard from within it, echoing through the clouds. Daniel stepped back in shock. "They're scared of you," he realized. "Yes," she said, "because they thought I was weak. They never thought I would remember my true self." Outside, the cold voice returned again, filled with rage and panic. "You cannot fight us. You are alone, child." Slowly, the girl opened her eyes. They were no longer just silver. They now held tiny stars within them. "I am not alone," she replied firmly. "The last time, everyone ignored me. This time, I am seen." Her words echoed across the city, even though her lips barely moved. On the streets below, people felt a strange warmth wash over them. Fear slowly turned into calm. They looked up at the glowing child in the sky and felt something they had not felt in a very long time. Hope back in the apartment. Daniel watched in amazement as the glowing energy around her grew stronger. Yet, she stayed completely in control. The same gentle girl who had followed him home now stood like a queen made of light. "Daniel," she said without turning around. "Yes." He answered. "Would you have helped me? If I wasn't strange?" He didn't even think before answering. Yes, I would have. A small smile touched her glowing lips. Then that is why you are my anchor here. With those words, she slowly lifted her small hand and gently placed it over Daniel's heart. A warm energy spread through his body, not painful, but powerful. He saw flashes behind his eyes, stars being born, galaxies spinning, planets healing, silent universes breathing. You saved me when I was nothing to your world, she whispered. Now I will protect your world as long as I exist. Above the city, the dark alien ship released one last desperate beam of energy directly toward her. It was burning, violent, full of hate. Daniel shouted, "Lena, move." But she did not move. She opened both arms wide. Instead of destroying her, the beam slowed, softened, then turned white as her light touched it. Slowly, the dark energy transformed into pure, gentle light. Like a storm turning into snow, the massive ship could not survive such purity. Its dark armor cracked from the inside, not with an explosion of fire, but with a silence so deep it felt holy. The ship began to dissolve into tiny particles of shining dust that floated harmlessly down into the atmosphere like falling stars. The threat was gone. The sky returned to normal, and for the first time, Earth had felt the touch of true living light. Slowly, the girl's glow faded back to its soft silver. She turned toward Daniel, suddenly looking small again, tired, vulnerable. Her legs weakened. Daniel rushed forward and caught her just before she fell. "I've got you," he whispered, tears in his eyes. "You don't need to be strong anymore. Not now." She looked up at him with a weak smile. "And you don't need to be alone anymore either," she replied. Outside, the city stood in silent awe, looking toward the small apartment where a lost alien girl had become something more than anyone could ever imagine. She was not just lost, she was chosen, and because she followed one kind human home that night, everything had truly transformed. For a long moment, everything was silent. No sirens, no shouting, no strange hum in the sky. Only the slow, steady sound of Daniel's breathing as he held the small alien girl in his arms. Her body felt warm, but fragile. The bright power she had released was gone now, replaced by a faint silver glow, soft and gentle, like moonlight on still water. She no longer looked like an unstoppable force. She looked like a tired child who had just given away everything she had. "Stay with me," Daniel whispered, his face close to hers. "Please stay with me." Her eyelids fluttered slightly. She could hear him, but her strength was slipping away. The world around her felt far away, like a fading dream. "I'm still here," she murmured. "I was just so tired." "You saved everyone," he said softly, unable to hold back his tears. "You saved the whole city, maybe even the world." She opened her eyes just a little. "Did they see?" "Yes," he replied. "They all saw you." Outside, people stood frozen in the streets, still looking toward the sky. Some were on their knees. Some were holding each other. For the first time, the city, the same city that had ignored her when she was lost and alone, now stood in complete silence in her honor. Someone began to whisper her name. "The light girl. The star child. The one who saved us." Phones were lifted into the air. News cameras turned toward Daniel's building. Helicopters hovered in the distance. The whole world wanted to understand the miracle they had just witnessed. Inside the apartment, Daniel gently carried her to the couch and laid her down on the blanket she had first slept on. It felt strange to see her so still after all the power that had filled the room only minutes before. He sat beside her and brushed a few strands of her glowing hair away from her face. "You are safe now," he said. even though he wasn't sure who he was saying it for her, or himself. A soft knock echoed through the apartment door. Daniel froze, slowly, carefully. He walked toward the door and looked through the small peephole. Two people stood outside, a woman in a white coat and a man in a dark uniform. "We're not here to harm her," the woman spoke gently into the door. "We only want to help. My name is Dr. Evelyn Carter. I study unknown life physiology. I promise she will be treated with respect." Daniel hesitated. He looked back at the tiny girl lying on his couch, her chest rising very slowly. Her glow dim, but still alive. "She doesn't belong to the world like a thing to be studied," he said through the door. "She's a living being, and we understand," Dr. Carter said softly. "But her power saved millions today. People will come. Governments, armies. Those who don't feel compassion. If we help her now, we can protect her from the ones who won't." There was truth in her voice. After a long pause, Daniel slowly unlocked the door. They entered quietly, not as soldiers, but as guests entering a sacred place. Dr. Carter walked carefully over to the couch and knelt beside the girl. She did not touch her at first. She only observed. "She is extraordinary," the doctor whispered. "Her energy signature. It's like nothing from our world. She has a name," Daniel said firmly. "She isn't just a signature. Her name is Lena." At the sound of her name, the tiny girl shifted slightly, as if it gave her strength. "That means she can hear." The doctor smiled softly. "That is a good thing." She gently placed a small scanner near Lena's chest. A soft blue light passed over her. "She is weak because she converted an incredible amount of energy," Dr. Carter explained. "But she is alive, stronger than any being I've ever studied." Daniel finally let out the breath he had been holding for hours. "She's not dying?" he asked. "No," the doctor answered. "She's healing." Outside, the world kept watching. News networks reported the same question over and over again. Who is the girl of light? Is she a savior or a threat? Inside the apartment, Lena's fingers moved slowly, searching for something in the quiet. Daniel noticed and gently placed his hand into hers, her small fingers wrapped around his. Tightly. "I'm here," he whispered. Her eyes opened just enough to see his face again. "You didn't leave." She breathed. "Never," he promised. "Not again. Not like the world did before." A faint smile touched her lips. Outside the window, the night sky was calm again. But it no longer felt empty. It felt changed, like the universe itself had shifted because of a single, brave choice made by a small, forgotten alien girl. And for the first time in her life, she did not feel lost. She felt like she had finally arrived. Morning sunlight slowly filled the apartment, touching the walls, the floor, and the small figure resting on the couch. The world outside had changed overnight, but inside Daniel's home, everything felt strangely peaceful. Lena lay under the soft blanket, her body no longer glowing brightly. Only a faint silver shimmer on her skin, like a memory of starlight. Daniel had not slept. He sat beside her all night, afraid that if he closed his eyes, she might disappear again, like a dream that fades with the morning. But she was still there. Slowly, her eyes opened. For a moment, she seemed confused. Then she saw him, and relaxed. "It's warm," she whispered. Daniel smiled for the first time in hours. "You are safe," he said gently. "You're home." She looked around the room carefully. The small table, the window, the soft blanket, the warm light, everything that had once felt strange now felt familiar. "Is this what a home is?" she asked quietly. "Yes," he replied. "It's the place where someone cares if you're here or not." Her eyes softened. She pulled the blanket around herself and sat up slowly. "I have never had that before," she said. Outside, the world was not quiet anymore. News vans filled the street. Cameras pointed toward the building. Reporters gathered, talking loudly into microphones, all trying to understand the miracle that had happened the night before. But inside, Daniel had turned off the television, closed the curtains, shut the door to the outside world. For now, 'twas just the two of them. "You saved a lot of lives last night," Daniel said softly. "People are calling you a hero." "I did not mean to be a hero," Lena replied. "I only wanted them to stop hurting me. And I didn't want them to hurt you." The words hit him harder than he expected. "You protected me," he asked. "You were the first one who touched me with kindness instead of fear," she said. "I cannot let harm reach you." A silence filled the room, not awkward, but heavy with meaning. Daniel finally spoke. "Lena, what happened to your world?" Her expression darkened for a moment, like clouds passing over a bright sky. "Before we were destroyed, my people sent out a signal. A hope. Something anchored in life. I was placed on a small escape path, unsure if I would survive. My world burned behind me. The only reason I lived." She looked up at him, as because I was meant to reach someone who still believed in kindness. He shook his head in disbelief. "So, me." She nodded slowly. "That's impossible," he murmured. "No," she said gently. "It is the rarest thing in the universe, and the most powerful." Suddenly, a soft blue light flickered near the window. Daniel turned quickly, fear rising in his chest again. But it wasn't a threat this time. It was different. Floating gently in the air was a small, glowing orb, no bigger than an apple. Inside it, tiny lights moved like living stars. "What is that?" he asked. Lena stood carefully and stepped toward it. The orb moved closer to her, responding to her presence. "It is a seed," she whispered. "A fragment of my world's life. I did not know it survived." The orb split into several glowing strands and gently wrapped around her hands. A soft warmth filled the room. The broken flower plant near the window slowly lifted, its dried leaves turning green again. Tiny buds formed. Within seconds, a beautiful, blooming flower stood where nothing had grown before. Daniel's mouth fell open. "You brought it back to life," he breathed. "No," she said quietly. It responded to hope. She looked at the blooming flower and smiled. "Earth is wounded, hurt by war, broken by fear, but still alive, like me." Daniel walked up beside her, staring at the miracle. "You could heal so much," he said in awe. "Yes," Lena whispered. "But only if humans learn how to heal each other first." Outside, the noise of the world grew louder. The door suddenly shook as someone knocked hard. "Open up." A voice demanded. "Government security. We need to speak with the alien entity immediately." Lena stepped back, fear racing through her body again. Daniel moved in front of her at once. "She is not an entity," he said firmly. "She is a child, and she is under my protection." The knock came again, louder this time. More aggressive, Lena looked at Daniel, her eyes wide and pleading. "Will they take me?" she whispered. Daniel looked at the door. Then back at her. "No," he said softly, but with strength. "Not unless you want them to." He turned back to the door and spoke loudly now. "She is not leaving. Not today. Not ever. So you can walk away, or you can learn how to respect the life you almost lost last night." On the other side of the door, silence fell. Inside, Lena stepped closer to Daniel and gently held onto his arm. "For the first time," she said quietly, "I don't feel lost anymore." And as the flower by the window reached toward the sunlight, spreading its petals wide in the new day, Daniel knew one thing with absolute certainty. The lost alien girl had not only found a home, She had found her purpose. The knocking did not stop. It came again, louder, harder, filled with impatience. The thin apartment door shook on its hinges, and dust fell from the top of the frame. Outside, voices rose, arguing, demanding, commanding. "Open this door now. This is a matter of national security. She has no right to stay here." Daniel stood firm in front of the door like a wall made of flesh and will. Behind him, Lena held his arm tightly, her fingers trembling. The small glowing flower on the windowsill shimmered gently, as if sensing her fear. "She doesn't belong to them," Daniel whispered to himself. "And she doesn't belong to their plans either." He took a deep breath and opened the door just a few inches, keeping the chain in place. "You don't get to barge in here like criminals," he said calmly. "This is my home, and she is under my protection." A tall man in a dark uniform stood closest to the door, his eyes hard and unreadable. Behind him, several others waited, some holding devices, others holding weapons. "You are interfering with government orders," the man said coldly. "That child is not human. She is an unknown organism that could pose a global threat." Daniel felt anger rise inside him, hotter than fear. "She saved your city last night," he shot back. "She stopped a warship. While you stood and watched, she fought for a world that isn't even hers." The man hesitated for just a second. Then he glanced past Daniel, toward the soft glow behind him. "I can see her," he said quietly. "And so can the world." Daniel slowly looked around. Dozens of people stood in the hallway now, not just soldiers, but neighbors too. Families, elderly people, teenagers, all staring with wide, uncertain eyes. Some were afraid. Some were curious. Some were in tears. Lena saw them too. She stepped out from behind Daniel. Gasps filled the hallway. Her silver skin glowed softly once again. Not aggressive, not powerful like before, but gentle, pure, peaceful. "I will not harm you," she said quietly, her small voice carrying more weight than any command ever could. "I did not choose to come here to destroy. I came here to survive. And I stayed because someone showed me kindness." Everyone went silent. "I know you are afraid," she continued. "You do not know what I am, and that is scary. But I am not your enemy. The ones who destroyed my world were the enemy. The ones who want to use me are the enemy." "Yes," the man replied tensely. "And how do we know you won't turn against us too?" Lena looked up at the faces around her. So many eyes. So many hearts. So much fear. "Because I could have destroyed you last night," she said softly. "And I did not." The truth of her. Words dropped into the hallway like a stone into still water. A young girl peeked out from behind her mother's leg and stared at Lena with wonder instead of fear. "You're pretty," the child whispered, for the first time in a very long time. Lena smiled at someone who wasn't Daniel. "Thank you," she replied. The rigid energy in the hallway shifted. People began to murmur softly, not in fear, but in amazement. The man in uniform stepped back slightly. "We need to report this," he muttered to the others. "She is not what we expected." "No," Daniel answered. "She is exactly what humanity forgot how to be." That day, something strange happened in the city. People started to talk, not about panic, not about aliens, not about war. They talked about kindness. They talked about the small, glowing girl who chose love instead of revenge. They talked about a human man who stood in front of the world to protect a stranger. By evening, the crowds outside the building had changed. Instead of soldiers and angry officials, there were families holding flowers, children holding drawings, old women whispering prayers for protection. Someone left a candle on the steps below Daniel's window. then another, then another. Soon, the street below turned into a soft river of light. Inside the apartment, Lena watched through a small gap in the curtain. Her eyes filled with tears. "They care now," she whispered. "Yes," Daniel said softly. "Because you showed them something they forgot. That a heart is more powerful than a weapon." She turned to him slowly. "Do you think they can learn?" She asked. "I think," he replied. "You're already teaching them." That night, Lena walked onto the small balcony for the first time. The city lights blinked like tiny stars across the earth. The air was warm, peaceful, high above. The dark sky felt quiet, but not empty. She lifted her small, glowing hands and whispered into the wind, into the universe, into the memory of her people. "I am still here, but I am no longer lost." And far away, somewhere between the stars, something gentle stirred in reply. Not darkness, not hunters, but hope the lost alien girl had followed. One kind human home. And now, an entire world was beginning to follow her toward light. The city felt different that morning. It was not just quieter. It was softer, as if something invisible had settled over the streets. Cars moved more slowly. People spoke in lower voices. Even the birds seemed to sing more gently inside the apartment. Lena stood at the window, her small hands resting against the glass. Below, she could see people gathered on the sidewalk. But they were not shouting now. They were not afraid. Instead, they waited peacefully, holding flowers, letters, and drawings made with bright colors. "Why are they here?" she asked softly. Daniel stepped beside her and looked down at the crowd. "They want to say thank you," he said. "They want you to know that what you did mattered." Lena blinked in confusion. "I only scared them before." "Yes," he replied. "And now you've shown them that fear doesn't have to control everything." Just then, there was a quiet knock on the door. Not loud, not demanding, just a gentle sound. Daniel opened it slowly. Standing there was the little girl who had spoken to Lena the day before. She held a small piece of paper in her hands. Her mother stood behind her, nervous but smiling. The young girl stepped forward. "I made this for you," she said, holding out the paper. Lena knelt so she could see it clearly. On the paper was a drawing, a small glowing girl standing over a city, her light wrapping around buildings to protect them. Beside her was a human holding her hand. "That's you." "And me?" Daniel whispered. "Yes," the child smiled. "You look like an angel." "I am not an angel," Lena said gently. "I am just someone who was loved when I needed it most." The girl hugged her tightly, without fear, without hesitation. In that small moment, something changed again inside Lena. A new feeling filled her one. She had never known on her own planet or in this strange world belonging more. People slowly approached her throughout the day. Not as investigators, not as soldiers, but as humans. They brought food, blankets, toys, and kind words. Some cried. Some thanked her. Some simply knelt and whispered prayers of gratitude. With every touch, every gentle word, Lena's glow grew warmer. Brighter, not explosive power, but a steady, comforting light. Later that evening, when the sun began to set, the sky filled with gold and orange. Lena walked outside the building for the first time since arriving on Earth. The crowd parted to make a path for her, like she was a queen or a sacred being. But she did not walk like a queen. She walked like a child. Discovering the world for the first time, her bare feet touched the ground, and the grass along the sidewalk suddenly became greener. Small flowers bloomed where she stepped. The earth recognized her presence. It responded to her light. Daniel watched from behind in silent wonder. "You're healing things without even trying," he said quietly. Lena looked around at the blooming world. "I think," she replied softly. "The world is healing itself. I am just reminding it how." As night arrived, the sky above them filled with stars. Lena lifted her face upward, her eyes reflecting their glow. Somewhere among those stars was the memory of her home. But for the first time, the thought did not make her feel sad. Instead, she felt grateful. "Do you ever miss your planet?" Daniel asked gently. "Yes," she answered honestly. "I miss its colors. I miss its songs. I miss the way our skies glowed at night." He looked at her. "Then why do you stay?" She turned to him and placed her small, glowing hand over his heart. "Because this world has something mine lost," she said quietly. "A chance to change." Daniel felt heat rush to his eyes. "And you are that chance," he whispered. "No," she corrected him with a small smile. "You are." In that moment, the stars above seemed to pulse slightly, almost like they were listening, almost like they approved. Suddenly, the glowing orb, the seed from her world, floated once again into the air in front of her. It shined brighter than before, stronger than before. It split into many smaller lights that drifted out into the sky and scattered across the city. Wherever they landed, dark places softened, broken ground regenerated. Sick plants grew strong. Cold hearts remembered how to feel warmth. "This is only the beginning," Lena said in awe. Daniel looked around at the glowing city around them. "What exactly are you beginning?" he asked. She looked into his eyes, her own glowing like distant galaxies. "A new world," she whispered, and in that sacred silence, with human hearts beating all around her, the lost alien girl finally understood something deeply true. She had never followed Daniel home by accident. She had followed him because this world needed to be reminded how to love again. That night, something strange and beautiful happened over the city as people slept in their homes. A soft glow began to rise from the streets, the rooftops, and the trees. It was not a hard or blinding light like lightning. It was gentle, warm, and calm, like candlelight floating in the air. The city that once looked gray and tired now shimmered as if thousands of tiny stars had fallen from the sky and rested on the earth. Lena floated slowly above the rooftop of Daniel's building, her body glowing like a small sun against the dark sky. Her eyes were closed and her arms were open, as if she was listening to a voice only she could hear. "It's them, isn't it?" Daniel asked from the balcony below. "Your people." "Yes," she whispered, her voice echoing softly in the air. "Their memory, their love, their warning." She opened her eyes and looked up at the stars. "They left one final gift in me," she said. "A message, not in words, but in light." Around her, symbols made of soft, glowing energy began to form in the sky. They were beautiful and strange, like perfect shapes made by the universe itself. People on the streets pointed upward, their mouths open in awe. Many fell to their knees. Others held hands with strangers beside them. Some simply cried, feeling something they had never felt before. "What does it say?" Daniel asked quietly. Lena turned her face toward the city far below. "It says..." She paused, as though finding the right human words. "It says that light will always return, even after the darkest night. It says that no world is truly lost if there is even one heart still willing to love." The glowing symbols slowly drifted downward like snow, fading as they touched the earth. As they disappeared, something incredible happened. People began to change. A man who had not spoken to his brother in 10 years suddenly called him. A woman who had been angry for years at the world opened her door and hugged her children for no reason. Neighbors who had never even looked at each other began to share food, words, and smiles. It was as if Lena's light had unlocked a part of humanity that had long been asleep. Daniel watched it all with wonder. "You didn't just save the city," he said in awe. You healed it. Lena slowly floated back to the balcony, her feet touching the ground gently beside him. I did not heal them, she said. They healed themselves. I only reminded them how. He looked at her small, glowing figure. Then out at the peaceful streets. And now what? He asked, for the first time since he had met her. Lena did not answer right away. I feel something new, she said slowly. A call. Not from the darkness, but from the deep universe. Another threat. He asked, tense again. She shook her head. No, not a threat. A responsibility. She placed her hand over her glowing chest. When I released my power, it spread further than just this city. Other worlds felt it. Other lost places, other dying planets, other broken civilizations. They felt hope. Daniel stepped closer. So what does that mean for you? It means... Her voice softened. I was never meant to stay in one place. I was meant to walk between worlds and bring light where there is none. A heavy silence filled the air. You're going to leave, he said quietly. Lena looked down, sadness flickering in her shining eyes. I don't want to, she whispered. This is the first place I ever felt at home. A gentle breeze passed between them, as if the world itself didn't want her to go either. But if I don't answer the call, she continued softly, those worlds will fade like mine did, and I cannot let that happen. Daniel took a deep breath, fighting the pain rising inside him. That means I will lose you, he said. She stepped closer and gently touched his cheek with her warm, glowing fingers. No, she said with a small smile. You will never lose me. You taught me love. You made me who I am. That light will always stay with you. Tears rolled down his face, but he nodded. When will you have to go? He asked. Soon, she answered. When the next sunrise touches the earth, he looked at the horizon, where the sky was slowly turning from black to deep blue. So, this is goodbye, he whispered. No, she said gently. This is see you again. Across the stars. She stepped back and raised both hands toward the sky. Her body began to glow brighter and brighter. Pure, warm, golden light surrounded her as she slowly rose into the air once more. The entire city looked up one last time to watch their tiny guardian. Remember? Her voice echoed softly through the wind. Even the smallest light can guide the darkest world home. As the sun began to rise, Lena's light blended into its first golden rays, and she vanished into the morning sky. Daniel stood there. The quiet world wrapped around him. The lost alien girl had followed him home. And because of that one small act of kindness, everything had truly transformed.